Happy Wednesday, Lion Golf Academy members and guests, and welcome back. Today's episode is brought to you by a request from user IO8ZT8KJ6I. And before we get started, I want to thank you for the most recent support. If you do like this type of content, hit that like, share, subscribe. We're all about educating golfers on cause and effect and how to differentiate between a swing tip that might work for you and a swing tip that might not work for you. And it's about education. So if you know somebody that likes this type of stuff, point them our way. I really enjoy doing this for you guys. And the request from that user, here's his question. Could you do a video about getting to a balanced setup every time? I find it hard to get nicely stacked over my feet every time, especially with different clubs, because driver is a different distance from the ball versus wedge. I video myself in the range and draw the lines. When I'm able to do it, I achieve a nice center strike and consistent low points, but on the course, I find I can't quite get nicely stacked over every shot. So this is unfortunate because this is what most of us face. We do stuff on the range and we're in a nice groove and we figure it out. We can't take it to the golf course. So this is normal. Some things I recommend you try to do is come up with a swing thought about how it feels when you are nicely stacked, so you can remember that swing thought, jot it down in your notes, look at what you are doing correctly during your practice session so you can transfer that over. But most of it is feel-based. You don't want to get too analytical with your setup. It's all feel. You have to feel like an athlete, but to help you recognize how to point out what's going on in your footwork, we're going to look at some swings today. We're going to look at this, how to distinguish where your centeredness is based on your setup and how to work around that and how your footwork really needs to be based on the setup. So we've got a professional on the screen right now, and we can see right off the bat, let's do some lines for you to try to draw when you're at home or on the driving range. And we're going to use Barney Purple. So if you have Barney Purple, kudos to you. Use it more. Barney Purple is a dying breed, and we have to keep Barney Purple up. So you want to try and look and draw the club shaft right through the body, and then from about your ear, maybe just behind your ear, try and draw as close as you can to that spine angle. It's not going to be anatomically correct. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to give you some idea. Then what we're going to do is go from the arches of the heels, and you can usually see it in the shoe, but sometimes you have to guess, and you have to figure out where the arches of both heels are, and you kind of split the difference. So there's one heel, there's the other heel. So let's just go right about here and draw up in the sky. So we can see that, yeah, she's pretty close to meet in the middle. But you can see how much more of her body is on the left side, our view left side, this way. Now, when you start to get that, now all of a sudden, your upper body has to work this way too at the very top to keep things in balance, because where her center of her balance swing is basically, we're going to draw this in green, is where those two lines meet up. So this is the collection of lines. So that's basically the center of her swing right there in green. And you'll see why this differs as we look at different people. But look at her swing now, and we're going to take it right down to the impact. And you can tell the camera shifts ever so slightly, so it's not going to be perfect, but we can get the idea right at impact. Look at where that center is. Boom, right in the center of her back. She hasn't shifted away from that, but in order to do this, you can see how much footwork she had to enable to stay balanced because of her setup. It is so heavy on one side. It's not equally distributed, the weighting. So her setup feels like it's very heel-based probably. And at impact, she has to get kind of toe-based to make up for that heel-based setting. And again, you cannot go and change people's setups and not affect her swing, because her swing evolved around her setup. So I can't go there and change her setup and expect her to hit it great. She's going to hit it worse and not like me unless I warn her and say, look, we're changing your setup because it needs to be, your swing needs to be affected. And the last thing to know, I cleared up some lines, but the last thing to note is where that center is in relation to you, because the higher that center becomes, the more potential footwork you have to use to keep it in balance as well. And so if we draw a line right where it goes through, now we can see where's that line. It's up in her upper midsection here, where if we start to look at Greg Norman next, you'll see it's much lower. It's almost to his hips. And as a result, his feet don't have to be as active. I've just noticed this. I don't say this is scientifically proven. This is just something I have noticed over the years of dealing with students. So let's bring up Greg Norman and take a look. So here's Greg Norman. Let's stay with Barney Purple to bring him back to life. And we're going to draw the same lines. There's his ear. I think that's his ear. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it gives you an idea. Arches of the heels straight up to the sky. You can see that he's much closer because in terms of those lines meeting, and you can see where his center, let's draw that in our green now, and it's going to be a little bit lower than the previous professional we saw. Her centeredness was up over here. So difference number one, but take a look as a result. Let's look at the footwork as he comes through. So that centeredness is still pretty centered in his swing. He's still holding on to it. As he comes on down through, we can see, does that center stay there? Bam, it's still right there. It hasn't moved at all. And look at the footwork. There's less footwork going on because it's lower to the ground. And now let's take a look at Rory, because let's see what Rory does. And this is Rory a little bit younger. We're going to switch from Barney Purple to yellow. And let's see those lines again. There's the back of the ear and arches of the heels. They're right about there. And because, man, look at that. It's no wonder the guy can drive it pretty well. And now let's look at where his line connects. It's pretty close to that belt line, so we can predict that maybe not a lot of footwork is going to happen here as he strikes a golf ball. We can see, look at that right foot. So we see it coming up a little bit right there, but now it's staying a little bit more neutral. Now as he strikes it, now the feet come up. So it's a little bit quieter as well, but compared to that first pro where she was very stacked in the back and that center was much higher, she had to engage her feet a little bit more right before impact. And now it's not necessarily just all about down the line. You have to look at face on, and this is also, you have to figure out where the center is for you based on that triangle set, where the center of that triangle is to the ground. So we can see that her centeredness is originally starting where that club head is. Her hip tilt at this time is about neutral, but take a look what happens as she strikes it. The hip tilt will jump up, but the key is where is her center of her chest as she strikes it. It is still where it was initially, even though she has increased her tilt and her hands have moved up ahead as a result. That center is still there. So where is that related to? It's where the golf ball is. So as long as you're not shifting right or left in your swing too much, then it's a little bit easier to stay more centered. But the problem is to get some weight shift for those that cannot turn a lot. They have to enact some right to left weight shift. And now all of a sudden that can throw your centeredness off. So when you start to look at professionals that are very flexible, they have the ability to stay more centered as they turn instead of enacting a lot of weight distribution. Now you can be a little bit confused of what you need to do. So this is not a cop-out, but it's very hard to give you an idea of what a centered setup is unless I see your swing or unless a golf professional who is working with you sees your swing and can make the necessary adjustments. But what I recommend you do is to find a setup where it promotes your strengths. If you do have a lot of foot action and you feel like you can get away with it, you're more of an athlete, then maybe you need a setup where your intersecting lines are higher on your sternum. If you are not an athlete, if you have trouble turning, you probably want one that is a little taller to bring that centeredness down to your belt buckle, and that'll allow you to turn a little bit more and have quieter feet. So I don't know if this answers your question. Hopefully it gives you something else to think about. But bottom line is with this channel is we don't promote anything to work for everybody. This is all about you. You're as individuals of fingerprints. So is your golf swing. Hope that helps you. If you have any more ideas for videos or questions you need answered, go ahead. Let me know in the comments below. But I appreciate your support. I will see you soon. Fairways and greens.